Sean, I wanted to catch up and put in context sort of what has been changed by the pandemic. So much has changed. We've been on an accelerated course in our advanced TV world for a few years now, and it seems like things have speeded up. So I was wondering if you could share, some of how you see some of the most significant changes.
I use the word accelerated, and I think that's the right word. I mean, if anything that we've seen since March, it's that changes that we saw coming, where we were seeing certain growth rates and certain build outs and that type of thing and trends. What we've seen since March is just an absolute acceleration of each of them. And if you will, it's about both, hub and spoke acceleration, if you will. So all of the things that you would expect that you would get growth from, subscription streaming, and then AVOD and advertising streaming and OTT and all the different ways that people can get world-class TV content. Those all exploded and accelerated, and those were key because, if you will, all the spokes got stronger. What was key was that the hub got stronger too, and during all the things that have unfolded, whether it's the onset of the pandemic and then the crisis of racial inequality and then the elections and the primacy of live television and the primacy of TV as a centerpiece in the household and that type of thing. We've done significant waves of research around how people are using media to get through everything from a stay-at-home period to all that was 2020. And what you're seeing is people reporting that 67% of people that we polled said that the television set had become the center of their house. 50% said that they had a dedicated TV set to a news channel pretty much 24/7. And at the same time, we saw that over a third of that population that we polled went and got another subscription service and went and got another AVOD service. So what we've seen in 2020, a year that I think some of us want to forget, but there are changes that we'll always remember. And I think the remembrance is that the acceleration that we saw in both, if you will, hub use and spoke use, really put us probably a couple years forward in our evolution. It's a good thing for marketers, particularly data-driven marketers.
So speaking of data-driven marketers, there's a big emphasis on cross-platform media buys, which is, becoming a lot more practical for a number of reasons. What targeting strategies should brands be paying attention to as they're putting together a cross-platform media buy?
Well, I think that audience-based buying is, we hear a lot about it. It's a headline probably in 2019, 2020, the two things we saw most in the headlines were A, attribution, and A, audience-based buying. And those are more than headlines, both of them. But let's take audience-based buying. And that is a practice that is really starting to grow and flourish and really be understood for the advantages that are there. And that is the ability to be truly agnostic as to where the pockets of your best potential customers can be found, and being able to, in a very efficient way, get to them with the right levels of stimulation in order for them to take an action or start a predisposition. And it really is about trying to fold the map between investment and outcomes. So I think that when you're thinking about targeting strategies, I think that embracing the concept of audience-based buying and not thinking about things from just an age, sex demographic, and not thinking about things that are from device specific or screen specific, but really sitting there and saying, I want to be completely objective as to where my audience may be, and I want to use a platform that's going to efficiently find them, and I want to be able to use first-party data to understand what happened and get better at it.
So Sean, we've been talking about local for a number of years, and it's a big business, has been historically going through a lot of changes. At the station level, at the local cable system level. I wanted to ask, what are some advantages for marketers making local TV buys today? How is it different? What are some of the opportunities?
The first thing I think of is the word platform. And there used to be an entire sort of tapestry as to pushing all the different levers and pulling them all together and trying to figure out about what bets to lay down against what mediums and what's emerging and is there anything on the decline and what are the efficiencies. And These days, we have MVPDs who have put together world-class platforms, and those are also the people that hold the viewing data. So, and when I say platform, I mean the ability to, I'd mentioned hub and spoke before, and that balance, and taking a look at everything from live linear TV to all the different ways that people are accessing, multi-screen premium TV content, and being able to, in a turnkey way through a local platform, able to make, if you will, the right sales call using the right device to the right audience, whether that's in a mobile, platform, whether that is, based in something that is a streaming platform. The level of partnerships that a lot of the MVPDs have been able to put together around these platforms has allowed them to, do the work of 100 media planners with a keystroke, and that is really striking that right balance and really going after the right audience. The critical thing in there, though, is of course the fact that they've got terrific granular viewing data, and that sets you up for the ability to start to do the thing that people most want, which is that sort of one-to-one deterministic data understanding of ad exposure and outcome. So when I think of platform and I think of my home market, I think of Audience One, which is New York Interconnect's platform. And that's a great example of the future delivered today, and the ability to do with a keystroke what used to take a dozen planners a couple of years ago.
So what about for advertisers who want to begin testing a campaign, national advertisers, that is, what are the advantages starting in a local TV buy, for instance, the New York DMA in particular?
I think that one of the advantages is, first of all, audience-based buying with a local platform and being able to use their first-party data, make that data set match, take advantage of the best-in-class granular viewing data that's available via some of these local platforms. And you really do get, I think, a rapid read, and I think that's what you're looking for. I mean, people understand that outcomes is more than just immediate sales and more than just website traffic and that type of thing. But with respect to understanding the full funnel outcomes that are possible when you have the combination of first party or third party data, or a combination of both from a data nimble advertiser, and you pair that with the kind of, again, granular world-class first-party data that an MVPD can have on viewership, that's a great way to get relatively rapid reads as to, again, that deterministic approach between what did your exposures do with respect to outcomes. And I think everyone is looking for that rapid read. They're doing it in balance with understanding, the disciplines of long-term brand building. But I think these local platforms, are, the ones that are, truly up and truly on a great trajectory with lots of clients behind them, lots of sales success behind them. These are the ones you can get a rapid read, and I think a rapid read is a sustainable advantage in this marketplace.
Great, Sean. And, we've been speaking throughout the pandemic. You've been, of course, speaking with your membership throughout it. I wanted to ask some thoughts you have about, investing in TV in a time of economic uncertainty. There's a tremendous amount of uncertainty around the pandemic and the path ahead. What are some thoughts that you have, both what you're hearing from the market and your own advice about investing in TV?
This really was the question of the early spring and into the summer was how much to invest, how much should I wait, should I invest now, what's the advantage to investing now? And one of the things that became one of our most popular pieces of output and most downloaded pieces of output was a piece that we did that said, keep calm and advertise on. And what we did was we looked through an enormous variety of all the different ways and all the different sources for what are the real empirical advantages of advertising through a recession. It's a 60 some odd page compendium, if you will, of, we did the hunting and gathering all over, 100 years analysis to put together the exhibitry and the argument for doing that. And it comes down, to, the absolute truism that now is the time to actually, when there is an economic recession and when there is a downturn in certain categories and the amount that people are advertising, now is absolutely the time to invest in, the simple principles like, making sure that your share of voice eclipses your share of market, and the return on that in terms of big results is super clear. One of the things that we've seen is that there's a lot of smart, savvy advertisers that are, data and analytically driven, who actually saw 2020 as launch time. Now, we tracked nationally that, we've seen $460 million worth of new advertising come into the national platform, 110 new brands in 59 categories. Their heaviest spending period was in, the toughest part of the pandemic, the 3 months and the beginning of the economic downturn. We saw the great number of advertisers with very sophisticated data analytics decide to launch on TV in that environment, and to great effect, to the ability to hit their goals, because they're already, looking at higher investment levels in the second half of 2020. So if you will, the philosophy of, if you will, buying in a down market. And for a marketer, sophisticated marketer, now is not the time to cut. Now is not the time to play it safe. Now is the opportunity, to, if you will, buy share efficiently in a down market. And the great thing about that is that the advantages that you get from that are not only the short-term advantages, but all the empirical data also shows that those advantages you get in share growth and other critical brand health metric growth, those are sustainable. And so, market share, the history of winners and losers, we've had 11 recessions over the last 100 years. And if you look back as to who put on the accelerator during those periods of time, during economic recession, it's the answer to who are basically the dominant category players. And if you take a look at who was brave enough to launch, their service, their product during that period of time, it's also people who were able to buy, if you will, relatively inexpensive, relatively cheaper market share inside of what was seen as a down market that accelerated, their growth from the get-go.